Okay, let me see. Staff, we're okay. We're recording. We're good to go.
Yes, sir. Good morning, everyone. We are good to go.
Good morning and thank you. Okay, good morning, everybody. It is July 11th. The time is 10:01. I will call the planning board meeting to order. We have the following board members with us. We are joined by our vice chair, Ms. Bailey. Good morning, Ms. Bailey.
Good morning.
We have Commissioner Washington. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
We have Commissioner Dorner.
Hello.
And Commissioner Giraldo.
Good morning, everyone.
And I'm Chair Shapiro. Please note that the deadline for all participant pre-registration and for all submission of materials was 12 noon on the Tuesday before this planning board meeting. Registered speakers may join the meeting with a link provided in the email by the planning board office. You may listen by phone by utilizing the caller number provided in the email, and of course anyone can tune in to listen live via live stream. If you wish to speak or become a person of record, please look at the form that you see before you. That is how you access this meeting. Though I have to say, if you're on this meeting, then you've already figured that out, now that I'm thinking about that. In addition to the commissioners, we are joined by Mr. Warner, our principal counsel. We have Jessica Jones, our planning board administrator, Joe Parsons, our senior technical hearing writer, and we have Mr. Flanagan and Mr. Croner helping us with technology behind the scenes. Thank you, everybody, for all the work that you do.
Yes, thank you.
We will move on to the order of cases, which we'll have one change. When we get to the regular agenda, we're going to take item 10 on our regular agenda first. And then the only other change is item 3B is an executive session. We're going to do that at the end of the very end of the meeting. And under commissioners' items, first, I just want to note that you saw on the screen before when we were scrolling through the Neighborhood Planning Academy is kicking off again. This is the second year of the third cohort of the Neighborhood Planning Academy. There it is. It is a free 7-week planning course. It has had just rave reviews from the participants. It's a very, very exciting and important program. So the deadline for registration is August 16th. We would encourage everybody to get online and check it out and see if it is for them. And thanks to the staff for all the work that they do on this wonderful program. The other commissioners' items that I have is a resolution in support of Park and Recreation Month. This is to recognize the thousands of skilled professional workers within our Department of Parks and Recreation and all the amazing work that they do for the residents of the county. The 2024 national theme for Park and Recreation Month is Where You Belong, and it celebrates the many ways parks and rec professionals foster a sense of belonging by providing welcoming and inclusive programs for all ages and abilities. So we recognize July 19, 2024 as Park and Recreation Professionals Day and July 2024 as Park and Recreation Month. And we endorse all the commission-wide celebrations that are going on, all the wonderful work. So commissioners, I'd look for a motion to approve the resolution of support.
Move
Approval.
Second.
Oh, it's too much for my brain. I'm going with Miss Bailey on the what's it called? What is it called?
The second.
The second.
No, the
Second.
first.
The motion.
The motion. That's it. Thank you. Thank you. We're going with Ms. Bailey on the motion. We're going with Commissioner Washington on the second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion, I'll call the roll. Vice Chair Bailey.
But I.
Commissioner Washington.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner. Commissioner Giraldo.
Vote aye.
The ayes, I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Next, we have, I look for a motion to approve the draft minutes of June 27th, 2024.
Motion to approve draft minutes. June 27th.
Second.
Got a motion by Vice Chair Bailey, a second by Commissioner Washington. If there's no discussion, I will call the roll. Vice Chair Bailey.
But I.
Commissioner Washington.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. We have no legislative updates. Nothing under item 3A. We'll move on to item 3C. This is a Department of Parks and Rec item. The U.S. Soccer Foundation Incorporated proposal to develop 2 mini pitches in return for sponsorship benefits. We have Mr. Carter, Ms. Wright, Ms. Manival, who will be giving us a presentation. I don't know what order that is. Maybe I'll start with Director Tyler. If there's anything you want to say about this item to kick this off.
Well, it is very short, what I have to say, but good morning to you, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the Planning Board. We're excited to bring this item to you, and that's all I'm going to say. Deputy Director Carter and the team members are going to make this presentation, so I yield to them. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Are we ready?
We are ready.
Well, good morning. Good morning to each and every one of you, Chair Shapiro, Vice Chair Bailey, and to the members of the Planning Board. For the record, I am Steve Carter, Deputy Director for the Department of Parks and Recreation in Prince George's County. We are here today because in April of 2024, the U.S. Soccer Foundation approached the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, Department of Park and Recreation, with a proposal. The U.S. Soccer Foundation is a nonprofit organization that was formed to encourage grassroots support for the game of soccer and foster interest in the sport. Per the Aspen Institute for Youth Sports Participation, soccer continues to be the #1 ranked sport to participate for youth with over 3 million participants. The U.S. Soccer Foundation proposes to build 2 mini soccer pitches for us on our existing tennis courts and then donate them to us. To be clear, it will not give us the money for us to build these, it will build them for us. They have already built 18 to 20 mini pitches in the DMV and over 700 around the U.S. In conjunction with the gift to us, it also proposes to display its logo and its funders' logos on the pitches and banners on the side fences for a specific time. Tracy Wright, in a few minutes, will speak in more detail about this proposal. This proposal triggers a review under the naming rights, advertising rights, and sponsorship benefits policy that the Planning Board adopted in March of 2024. And it is the first such proposal to be presented to the department since your adoption of that policy in March. Kristen Manival, from my General Counsel, is now going to refresh your memory on the elements of that policy that are relevant to this proposal transaction. Thank you, and we look forward to hearing from the rest of the team, and I'll turn it over to Kristen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next slide, please. Okay. And I think even the next slide too. Prior slide. Great, thank you. Good morning, members of the Planning Board. By way of reminder, as Steve said, back in March, the Planning Board adopted the naming rights, advertising rights, and sponsorship benefits policy. The policy covers proposals of things like in-kind support, as Steve said, meaning work performed for us, which is what U.S. Soccer Foundation proposes to do, that are over $25,000. And as you'll hear in a moment from Tracy, U.S. Soccer's proposal is in excess of $25,000. Pursuant to the policy, a legal entity such as U.S. Soccer Foundation can propose to provide in-kind support for a park asset, and the mini pitch soccer would be a park asset under the definition, and receive a sponsorship benefit in return. A sponsorship benefit is a commercial benefit of specified duration that is established pursuant to a definitive agreement and obligates the commission to display the trademark of a legal entity for a specific period of time. And note, U.S. Soccer Foundation is not requesting naming rights or advertising rights. Next slide, please. The policy says that as to park assets such as the proposed mini pitches, for sponsorship benefits, the commission has delegated to the planning board the authority to declare park assets as eligible for sponsorship benefits. By adoption of the policy in March 2024, Planning Board delegated to the Department of Parks and Rec the authority to declare park assets as eligible for sponsorship benefits. So you're asking yourself, why is this proposal before you today if the authority has already been delegated from Planning Board to Department of Parks and Rec? Well, it's because the policy also says that if the proposal has a commercial value of $100,000 or more, it must be presented to Planning Board for approval. As you will hear from Tracy, the proposal does exceed $100,000. Pursuant to Section 5 of the policy, sponsorship benefits should be granted only if the fiscal benefit derived from the commission is appropriate. And so we're going to hear analysis of that too. I'm now going to turn it over to Tracy Wright to describe U.S. Soccer Foundation's proposal. Next slide.
Thank you, Kristen. And good morning, members of the Planning Board. I'm Tracy Wright. I am the Resource Development Officer. So what you're looking at right now is a rendering of what the U.S. Soccer Foundation would like to install on 2 of our existing tennis courts. The sizes would be a 40 by 84. Our tennis court that it would go on would be a 35 by 78. And the surface would be 34 by 78. And the commission already has one of these that's in Montgomery County at Sundown Local Park. Next slide, please. The U.S. Soccer Foundation Incorporated values the potential gift at $200,000. That's $100,000 per mini pitch, which breaks down into $75,000 in materials and $25,000 in labor and shipping. So we would have to remove the chain link fencing. Regarding electricity for lighting, as at Lane Manor, we would need to upgrade that location to 120 volts within 3 months of completion. As for South Lawn, that location does not currently have electricity, and it would cost us around $40K to bring the electricity to it. But in light of the cost, the U.S. Soccer Foundation will not require us to do so within 3 months of completion. Instead, we can do that later under with CIP funds and add the lighting there. So the mini pitch structure would be warranted for 10 years. The playing surface would be Snap Sports rubber tile, warranted for 5 years. Then if we want, we would pay for the warranty for the remaining useful life of up to 16 years. We've asked for a 1-year warranty on workmanship, and we would need to provide annual reports for the first 5 years showing the usage rates, photos, etc. Next slide, please. So the proposed length of agreement is 5 years. The U.S. Soccer Foundation seeks the right to display logos of itself and of its funding partners on the fields. The quantity would be 2. The side fences would have a quantity of 7. Of each mini pitch, the right to use each mini pitch 1 day per year. We would permit them, and we would issue per section 6.d of the policy for its own special events, such as tournaments, clinics, events, training sessions, media functions. So we would get to approve this, and its funders and current funders under A. James. These are the funders: A. James and Alice B. Clark Foundation, the DC United, and Washington Spirit. Next slide. Here is a rendering of the surface of the pitch and the 3 logos. So one would be the commission, as you see, that's in the middle. And then they have 8 banners on the side fences, one for the commission, one for the U.S. Soccer Foundation, and 6 for its funders, DC Spirit, DC United Foundation, Clark Foundation. Next slide, please. So based on its production and turnaround, the U.S. Soccer Foundation wants us to sign an agreement with them really by today, but at the end of July, we'd like to be able to do this. And if we could put these into the fiscal year for 2025 budget and build the mini pitches by November 2024. So in conclusion, the Department of Parks and Recreation staff requests the Planning Board's approval of this transaction and the described sponsorship benefits. And are there any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Wright, Ms. Manival, Mr. Carter, Mr. Tyler. Commissioners, any questions for the staff on this item?
Just one quick question. Thank you all for the presentation. So does the use of the tennis courts become obsolete? I'm just not familiar with the mini pitch concept, so.
Yes, what's going to happen is both of these locations currently have 2 tennis courts, right? So we're going to take off 1, not 2, and convert it to this mini pitch. So these are locations that our park staff and our planning staff have reviewed. They don't get a lot of usage for tennis, but we thought just taking away 1 and adding a new amenity could be beneficial, not just to us, but to the residents and the youth of the county.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Kind of following up on that, Steve. When we have our budget hearings, we didn't get many tennis players this past year, but in prior years, we usually do. Well, they'll come around and they'll talk about how they go to different courts and stuff, and they really want high quality tennis courts. Have you guys run this past them and kind of communicated that the tennis courts are not going to be there? And then another question on this field is, what's the what is going to be the uptake and like kind of continual maintenance differences and stuff? Are we going to have to like shift a lot? Are we going to have to get new supplies or new kind of equipment for this? Or would we be able to use our existing equipment? And is this going to be turf, or how is it going to be? Because when we were doing all the sports fields before years ago out in Bowie, one of the things that had come up was legislation at the state that if it has artificial turf, you have to dispose of it in certain ways. And we had gone back and forth about maintenance and other things. So I want to make sure that we're not running into kind of similar issues here as what we did before.
Yes, to answer your first question, we did outreach for about a week and a half, where we had a QR code at both parks. And to be transparent, we got 6 people that thought it would not be a good idea to move forward. And as it relates to tennis, our asphalt team is refreshing as many tennis courts as we can in the county that the budget allows. So we've been doing that and being proactive with that. The surface for this, Commissioner, is a rubber surface. It is maintenance friendly. We have had a couple of these already in our system. And like Tracy said, they will be under warranty for, I think, 5 years. So our maintenance staff have seen this material before, and they don't feel that it's going to cause a problem as far as them cleaning it as much as possible, because we know that it's going to get a lot of play.
What's disposal like though? Because that was the state legislation that came out later on was talking about disposal after 25 or 30 years. Would that fall under this legislation?
I'm not sure. I'll have to get back to you on that. Okay.
And how big is this in terms of sizing of like typical tournament play fields? Is this more of like an indoor kind of court, like mini, like Super 6 sort of a size, or is this gonna be full size?
No, this is mini. This is how soccer is trying to reach another audience, is to kind of shrink the field. So this is 3-on-3 or 4-on-4, so people can play quickly, 30-minute games, rotate in other players of that magnitude.
Okay.
Just to clarify, it's not even bigger than the court itself. I think the tiles go right on the existing court, so it's the same size as a tennis court.
Okay, that's great. And are we gonna have enough space to, like, if there were injuries or anything like that for emergency vehicles to get into here? I assume probably so, since we have a tennis court already in there.
Yeah, we have plenty of space at both parks. Once again, the maintenance staff and our planning team have visited both parks and thought about things such as that.
Okay, cool. All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Other questions?
I don't have any questions. I just want to thank the staff for this. I think it's a great idea. I like both locations. I think those are great locations. And it's even better that they don't have to tear up the asphalt, that they just can put the rubber surface right over the asphalt. Now, disposing of the asphalt would be an issue, but the way it is. So I want to thank staff. And I see the need. You can compare these to the smaller basketball courts that there are outside. And so I think this will give more exposure to other children to play soccer. So thank you.
Well said. And the only other thing I would add is that I imagine you all will be watching this as well. But if these things are as popular as we imagine they will be, then how do we find more of them? But we'll monitor that and see how it goes. So,
But the U.S. Soccer Foundation already told us that they would like to partner and do more. So we'll pay attention to these two, if approved, to get more in Prince George's County for the Department of Parks and Recreation.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, any other questions for staff, folks?
Mr. Chair, I don't have a question, but I just wanted to thank the staff for one other thing. With regards to the Riverview Park, where the dog park is, they've been doing a good job of maintaining it. And with the house that's there that's used with the Boys and Girls Club, there was some windows that were outside, not on the building, just laying there, and broken glass. And I called Mr. Carter, and it was taken care of the next day. I was just worried. I was concerned about any liability issue. So thank you. I have nothing further.
All right, appreciate the
One
kind
other
words.
kind of question or suggestion. When you get this installed, I doubt it's going to be hard for people to figure out where it is, because in at least the Lane Manor Park area, there's a huge Latino population that's out there a lot, and they like to barbecue and hang out in the fields and do stuff and play soccer. So that's probably going to be easy for them to find it. But can we, in that particular location, I'm less familiar with the one in Oxon Hill, but at least the one out in Adelphi, can we put up signs that's over by like the university, what's it called, the University Hills Duck Pond or whatever the pond is over there? Because it's not obvious when you're parking over there by the pond that if you were to walk down the trail and across the bridge, then you would get to this whole other splash park area and fields and stuff like that, unless you've already done it. And having that signage to advertise that, hey, if you go over this little trail, then you can also get to this really nice facility, would be probably pretty useful for people and informative.
Will do. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Other questions? Don't see any. Thanks, team, for the excellent work. Commissioners, I would look for a motion.
Move approval, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
A motion by Commissioner Washington, a second by Commissioner Giraldo. Any discussion on the motion? Thanks again for all the good work. I will call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
But I.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Thanks again, team. Well done.
Thank
Thank
y'all.
you.
Have a great day.
Next, Commissioners, we have our consent agenda items. Is there anyone who wishes to oppose staff's recommendations on items 4A, B, and C, or any board member wishes to discuss any of these items? If not, I would look for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, after consideration of the records of items 4A, 4B, and 4C, I move adoption of the staff findings and approval of these items in the consent agenda in accordance with the recommendation of staff.
Second.
Got a motion by Vice Chair Bailey, a second by Commissioner Washington. If there's no discussion, I will call the roll. Vice Chair Bailey,
Vote aye.
Commissioner Washington,
I vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo,
I vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Moving on to our regular agenda items again, we're going to start with item 10 on our agenda, and then we'll go through the rest of the items in order. Item 10 is Community Planning Division Suitland Legacy Mixed Use Town Center Design Review Committee nominations. We have Ms. Tariq is going to be giving a staff presentation, and Eve, that is all we have before us. Take it away.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Board. For the record, this is Maha Tariq. I'm presenting Councilmember Urita's nominations to Suitland Mixed Use Town Center Design Review Committee. It is concluded in the memorandum that the nominees are, I'll just state the names of the nominees: Doris Brown, Kevin Carter, Monica Gaddy, Patricia Lindsay, Anthony Motley, Christian Smith, and Tony Winsett. We would like the Planning Board to please confirm these nominations. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions about this process? Fairly pro forma process, but it is our authority to do it. No questions, then thanks, Ms. Tariq. I would look for a motion to approve the recommendations.
Move approval,
Motion
Mr.
to-
Chairman.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Washington, a second by Vice Chair Bailey. If there's no discussion, I will call the roll. Commissioner Washington,
I vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey,
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo,
I vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Thank you, Ms. Tariq.
Thank you.
Next, we will go to item 5 on our agenda, regular agenda items. This is Countywide Planning Division. This is a mandatory referral, MRF 2023-002, UMD Basketball Practice Center. We have Ms. Skinner, who's representing the applicant. Ms. Osei is going to be giving a staff presentation. And I don't think we have anyone who signed up to speak on this besides members of the applicant's team. We'll turn to staff for a brief presentation. Take it away.
Sure. Good morning, Chairman Shapiro, Vice Chair, members of the board. For the record, I'm Christine Osei, Countywide Planning Division. Item 5 on the agenda is a proposed basketball performance center at the University of Maryland. The project was accepted on April 15, 2024, with a waiver from the applicant to review beyond the 60-day timeframe. The project is on the campus at the university south of the existing Xfinity Center at 8500 Paint Branch Drive. The new 43,100 square foot two-story facility is designed as a National Athletic College Association Division I basketball practice facility for women's and men's basketball teams with 2 objectives: to provide state-of-the-art training equipment and training spaces for the development of student athletes and basketball programs at the university, to bring together athletes, coaches, and staff in a dedicated practice facility for games and tournaments, train and condition and foster teamwork. The new facility will have an underground pedestrian connection to the south of the existing Xfinity Center at the underground level. The proposed development is outside the Aviation Policy Area 6 and will not impact navigation at the existing College Park Airport. Before I conclude my presentation, I just want to run through 3 slides so you just see an overview of what it looks like. You can go to the next slide, Ken. This is the northwest view of the facility. Next slide. This is the west view. North view. And the landscape plan of the new facility that will be built. I'm requesting the board to approve recommendation outlined in the staff report and transmit the packet to the applicant. The project team is participating this morning and may have some input or comments to be made. This concludes staff presentation, and I'm available for comments from the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Osei. Commissioners, any questions for staff? We'll see if the applicant has any comments. Don't see any. Thank you, Ms. Osei. Ms. Skinner, you or any members of the applicant's team, anything you want to add?
Yes, we do. Good morning, Chair Shapiro and members on the board and staff and all attending. My name's Tracy Skinner. I am a Senior Associate General Counsel at the University of Maryland. And we're here today to present on
Ms.
the...
Skinner, let me interrupt you 1 second. You don't need to be on camera, but we can't see you. But you don't need to be on camera, but just
I am
just to let
on
you know.
camera. I'm sorry, I am on camera, but I guess it's not showing up.
Yeah,
Oh,
don't
wait a
worry
minute.
about it.
I see. Let me see something. Everything indicates I'm on camera, but
We're fine. We can hear you fine, and just keep going.
thank you. It's probably better that you don't see me.
Oh, yeah.
Ms. Osei's presentation of the purpose was correct. And before I go into the corrections to be made to the staff report, which is our main purpose here of speaking, I want to say that the staff worked very hard on this. There were many submissions made by the university on this, and we had our pre-acceptance meeting. We had a lot of discussion, but it seems like maybe in the staff report some things got missed. So what I want to do is make some corrections to the report, and I will take on 2 corrections, and then I have a project team member who will take on the technical corrections. As I said, Ms. Osei.
Excuse me, just 1 second, Mr. Shapiro.
Yes, Mr. Warner.
I just want to make sure it's clear. And I'm not aware of what corrections Ms. Skinner is seeking to make to our staff report, but of course our staff writes the staff report, not the applicant. Just to make that clear, but she may have corrections that she wants to note, and we may be in agreement with them, but just to clarify. And then since I have your attention, we do have 1 person signed up in opposition, but is my understanding that person signed up incorrectly? It didn't get mentioned, but.
Yeah, that was the person signed up for the wrong case, so it's
right.
They're no longer on that.
Thank you. Apologize, Ms. Skinner. Thank you.
That's fine.
Oh, that's fine. Thank you, Mr. Warner. And I understand, but these are corrections to the report based on information that was submitted to the planning staff for review that the planning staff has, and including a response letter to certain questions of the staff that did not make it into the agenda packet. So all of this was previously submitted, all this information, and we'll watch out for such things in the future that we don't have to be doing this at a meeting. So the first thing, the staff report says that the center is being built basically for games and tournaments. As you just heard Ms. Osei say, it's for practice, it's for training. It will be a great center for the university. The university is the only university in the Big Ten that does not have a dedicated basketball practice facilities. So that's what this building is, the Basketball Performance Center. It's for training of both the men's team and the women's team. The other correction to be made is to the funding of the project. The report states that this will be funded through MEDCO, the Maryland Economic Development Corporation, with tax-exempt bonds. I think that was a carryover from another university project. This project is primarily funded through the University of Maryland College Park Foundation. So let's say 90–95% of the money is coming from donations for this center, and it's privately funded. The other corrections are technical corrections. So I would like to introduce Ricky Babcock from Gensler. He's on our architect element of our project team, and he will make some technical corrections, and I would just like to close after him. Thank you.
Good morning, board. For the record, Ricky Babcock, design manager with Gensler's sports practice out of the Washington, D.C. office. Appreciate your time and we appreciate staff's review of this project. The corrections that Tracy has noted on the technical side related to the environmental assessment review, a supplemental geotechnical report has been submitted for staff review to address that concern under the soil section of the staff report. And then a handful of items for the transportation assessment related to parking lot UU, which is adjacent to the Basketball Performance Center, specifically parking stall sizes, access to lot UU for emergency vehicle access, and additional information related to quantities of bike parking have also been submitted in a supplement prior to the meeting and prior to the preparation of the agenda. We're appreciative of Ms. Osei and the staff, but we'll be able to submit these and make sure they are part of the record, that they've been submitted and address the staff recommendations and concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Babcock. Back to you, Ms. Skinner.
Thank you, Chair Shapiro. The technical corrections that Mr. Babcock was just noting were in a letter dated June 28th to Ms. Osei, and I think it just, as I said before, there was a lot of information submitted, but some of the correct information was not called out. So we appreciate the indulgence of the planning board that we could make these corrections of record, and we will submit through Mr. Babcock just a markup of the agenda packet, the staff reports, so they know where these corrections should have been the same as what was submitted. We appreciate everything the board does. It's always a pleasure to be here. If there's no questions from the board, I would like to ask for the board's approval of this project. And I think it will be good not only for the university, but it'll be good for the county overall, because we're going to be able to recruit some of the best players around and bring some really good basketball to this county. And so for everybody's benefit, not to include revenues too, hopefully.
Thank you, Ms. Skinner. So, Ms. Skinner, this question for you, and maybe Mr. Warner, you can chime in too. My concern around our process is this is a mandatory referral. So what is before us is staff's recommendation. So what we were, I imagine we're about to do, was to approve the transmittal of staff's comments to you. And that's really what's before us. If you're asking us to, for staff to amend their report, unless they can do that on the fly, I imagine that, well, maybe we can, but I imagine that this is actually going to slow down the process, because you're asking staff to revisit the report, and then we need to consider an amended report from the staff.
Mr. Shapiro, David Warner, I can answer that.
Yeah.
So, Ms. Skinner and Mr. Babcock have identified, from what I can tell, 4 things that are not in staff's current staff report. If staff agrees with the 4 points that they've addressed are missing in the staff report, then the planning board can approve Ms. Skinner and Mr. Babcock's corrections, and in their motion adopt the recommendation with the changes submitted by Ms. Skinner and Mr. Babcock. And just looking at them, I know that Ms. Skinner's first comment that this is for games, I mean, this is for training, not games, is true. As much as a Northwestern grad as I am, I don't want to see them improve their basketball program. I leave that out of it. But the other items on funding, well, while we are sending this back to the university, it's still a public document, and it's important that a public document has the correct information on something like funding. So if that's true, and we don't have any contradictory evidence, then I would accept her information about where the funding is coming from. And then the two technical corrections, I'd ask Ms. Osei if we did receive those items on June 28th. If so, does she have any problem correcting her staff report for those two items? So that's how I'd handle these, and I think you could incorporate them in your motion.
All right, Ms. Osei, thoughts, reactions?
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, I would admit that the information on the funding, I had it on the report. I may have submitted the wrong one version because I have that information. It was submitted just as a mistake. So I have that information. The two technical concerns that I raised from transportation specifically and environmental planning. And I would go back because those information were forwarded to those sections to make sure their memos reflect what the applicant has provided. So Crystal is on the call, but we can put our heads together at staff to look at those two based on the advice from Mr. Warner and see what we can do to bring those. But I'm not sure how we can bring together if that's what staff looked at and they came up with those conclusions. I just bring together the staff report with comments from staff. And so I have to verify that that was sent to them and then go to the next level.
All right, so it sounds like, Ms. Skinner, if you want the technical corrections included, I'm not sure we're going to be able to do that today.
Right.
Ms. Skinner, you're on mute if you're talking.
Chair Shapiro,
Yeah.
I'm in a quandary because I would like the process to move on, but at the same time, I know that this information was submitted to staff. And we did submit a response letter. And that response letter should have been submitted to staff then. And it wasn't. And so.
Yeah, I can help with this again.
Okay.
This isn't difficult. First of all, the only thing that Ms. Skinner and Mr. Babcock pointed out is that our staff report says a geotechnical report was requested with the application but was not provided. They want you to say it was provided. If we don't have that evidence, or we don't have anybody on our call here that can agree to that, we can accept items into the record after you make your motion and add them to the record, and they can change your letter that you send back if indeed we have them. We don't have anybody online here who can agree that they sent this report on June 28th. Then you can still pass your motion and say we're going to accept the fact that Ms. Skinner submitted these reports on the 28th. If indeed we have evidence of it, we'll add that to our letter. You can do that.
Okay. And Mr. Warner, I appreciate it. And I appreciate you trying to work with us on this. There were some other notes where the report says we were non-responsive, but we did submit the information. So I think it is a question, is correcting, the university did not submit the information. The project team was outstanding in this process. They worked and they submitted materials and informations. There's a much larger file that Ms. Osei received that has so much of this information in it. But the summary letter was June 28th, trying to provide guidance to what the staff responses were earlier from the pre-acceptance meeting. And we worked to address all of that. I don't know if there's a way to put in the packet at this point, the responses of that June 28th letter that was sent to Ms. Osei. And then I think you will find that all the information was submitted.
I'm still trying to, I understand to be blunt, you're sort of defending the integrity of the team. I get that. That's kind of you. But but from a practical perspective, this is a mandatory referral. So the more, Ms. Skinner, the more you get into making sure that you want to have all the I's dotted and T's crossed, I mean, to be blunt, all you're doing is slowing down your own process.
Now, I understand, Chair Shapiro, believe me, we don't want to do that. This has been a long process to
So
get.
we have before us, you know, what we're about to approve this. We're not going to be able to do everything that you want because for the integrity of the staff, they're going to need to check to make sure that these things are done. Mr. Warner's given you some suggestions on how we might proceed, but it's not going to do everything that you want because some of the data that you're talking about is just going to take more time to verify.
I appreciate that and thank you. And you know what I even appreciate more is leaving this hearing with an approval. So
I would think.
I would think. I like Mr. Warner's suggestion about the use and the funding, definitely the funding, because that was just a misstatement. And we all agreed to that. So we will make certain on the next round, when we have one coming up, it's on the Supnick building that is coming up on the campus in 2 weeks. And as soon as we get the staff report, we will review it. If that's allowed, if we can get it before the hearing, we will review it and talk with Ms. Osei, as we've done a number of times over the course of this process. So I'm asking that the 2 corrections that Mr. Warner said could be made and have been agreed to by Ms. Osei, that they be made, and then ask for approval, and we'll move on, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Okay. All right. So what I'm hearing, colleagues, if this is all right with you, is that we're looking for a motion to approve transmittal to include 2 corrections, that this is for training, not for games and tournaments, and that the source of the funds are from the UMCP Foundation primarily, not Medco. And it sounds like that's all we need to do. Mr. Warner, you're okay with that?
David Warner, Principal Counsel. No, I think your motion should identify that also that there are 2 reports that were purportedly submitted by the applicant that aren't included in the staff report, and that you will accept those reports being submitted after your motion as additional items into the record. I mean, they can do it without you even saying it because the procedures say so, but.
Okay, that's fine by me, colleagues, if it's okay by you. Ms. Osei, anything else you want to add?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I would like to say that, as I've said before, acknowledging that the funding section, I have that information. It was mistakenly not included here as an oversight. But the other 2 items, I have to go check to see what was submitted to staff. We were running with 3 projects at University of Maryland, all at the same time, moving at the same speed. And something must have fallen away on the wayside with staff, or what I provided to staff, and what I may not have. So I will check the 2 reports that Ms. Skinner has indicated from what I received. And we have a collection of where information received is stored, where it's sent to staff through a link. So I'm not the only one receiving that information. I'm moving it out. So we'll verify that and make sure staff has that and proceed accordingly as advised.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Osei. Commissioners, I'm fine with all this. I'm not totally clear as to what the motion is, but I'm fine with all this.
Yeah, and I'm fine with it too. I just have a clarifying question, Mr. Chairman. I mean, basically, assuming we all agree, of course, to approve the recommendation and transmittal, we are approving staff's recommendations to include the corrections as read into the record by Ms. Skinner. And my question really is with regards to the technical corrections that Mr. Babcock spoke to, because it sounds like Ms. Osei cannot today confirm that we received the report. And for us to add to the motion that we're going to receive them after the deadline, let's assume we don't have them, concerns me just as a matter of our process. And I think, Mr. Warner, you said that we don't even have to include that in the motion because this is a recommendation, back to the chair's original point. I hope that was clear in terms of my articulating what I'm trying to clarify, so.
You did a good job.
Yep, that's correct. Your motion's fine, as you said, it to accept the 2 corrections from as read into the record by Ms. Skinner. And even without mentioning the technical corrections, we have that in the hearing record, and they are able to submit those documents that are dated June 28th into the record after this, and you can correct your letter once you see those records. Well, staff can in their letter back to the University of Maryland. But I think it is important that if evidence was submitted, as Ms. Skinner suggests, that a staff report that says that they never submitted it wouldn't be a good thing not to have corrected. So that's why I think it's important to leave the record open, which we do under our procedures. And so you can proceed from there. But your motion is fine as done with just the 2 corrections from Ms. Skinner, because we do agree with those. Thanks.
Okay. All right, so I would look for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the recommendations of staff to include the 2 corrections as noted on, as read into the record by Ms. Skinner, and approve the transmittal of MRF-2023-002 to Ms. Tracy Skinner, University of Maryland. And congratulations on what promises to be a phenomenal practice court. So it looks great.
Second.
A motion by Commissioner Washington, second by Vice Chair Bailey. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I will call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
I vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Thank you, Ms. Skinner. Thank you, Ms. Jose. Thanks to the rest of the team at University of Maryland as well.
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you, and I wish, can you still hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, it kind of went weird. I want to say, now I wish you could see me, especially after Commissioner Washington's comments, because I was beaming with a big smile. I appreciate your time. I did not mean to cause confusion, but I'm glad we all came together. And thank you very much, Mr. Warner, Ms. Jose, and to all of you. And have a good day. I think we can leave now.
Yeah, you're good to go. Thanks, Ms. Skinner.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
All right, we'll move on our agenda. Next on our agenda is item 6. This is preliminary plan of subdivision 4-23033, AutoZone Hyattsville. Mr. Goldsmith is representing the applicant. Ms. Gupta is going to be giving a staff presentation. We do have a few folks who signed up to speak on this item. This is an evidentiary hearing, so when the time comes, I'll be requiring those who are intending to provide testimony to take an oath. And with that, I will turn to staff. Ms. Gupta for a staff presentation first. Take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and doing a quick sound check.
We can hear you fine.
Okay, thank you. Again, good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the board. For the record, I'm Mridula Gupta with the subdivision section. Item number 6 on the agenda is a preliminary plan of subdivision 4-23033 titled AutoZone Hyattsville. The subdivision proposes one parcel for 7,348 square feet of commercial development. This application is supported by an approved certificate of adequacy ADQ-2023-058. As a matter of housekeeping, the additional backup includes one exhibit received from the applicant prior to the Tuesday noon deadline. Next slide. The 0.82 acre site is located within Planning Area 72 and Council District 5. Next slide, please. More specifically, the site is located in the northeast quadrant of the intersection of Maryland 214, Central Avenue, and Norair Avenue. Next slide. The subject site is located in the commercial, general, and office zone. This preliminary plan of subdivision is, however, reviewed in accordance with the site's prior mixed-use infill zone. Next slide. The subject site highlighted in red is located in the military installation overlay zone for height under both the prior and the current zoning ordinance. Under the prior ordinance, the property was in the development district overlay zone associated with the 2010 approved Subregion 4 master plan. Next slide. The site map shows the site topography, which is essentially flat. Next slide. This slide shows the master plan rights-of-way located in the vicinity of the site. Next slide. This is the aerial view of the site, which is currently vacant. Next slide. The applicant proposed 2 direct access points for the subject site, one to Central Avenue as shown with black arrows, and one to Norair Avenue as shown with blue arrows on the slide. Excuse me. No additional right-of-way dedication is required along the abutting public roadways. Next slide. The applicant requested a variation from section 24-121A3 to allow 1 direct access driveway to Central Avenue and arterial roadway. This variation request is detailed further on pages 8 to 10 in the staff report. As mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, the additional backup includes a letter from the applicant requesting revisions to conditions 4A and 4E. Condition 4A requires that a bicycle lane be provided along the site's frontage of Central Avenue in accordance with the recommendations of the 2009 approved countywide master plan of transportation and the 2010 approved Subregion 4 master plan. The applicant requested a revision to this condition to clarify that the required facility should be accommodated within the right-of-way as shown on the preliminary plan of subdivision, and that no additional right-of-way dedication is required to provide this bike lane. For the second requested revision, staff recommended that all large vehicles, including delivery trucks and trash trucks, to the site utilize Central Avenue and not be allowed direct access onto Norair Avenue. To that intent, staff had recommended condition 4E requiring signage to be placed at the site access point along Norair Avenue, prohibiting truck movement from that access point. The applicant has requested a revision to staff's recommended condition prohibiting access to tractor trailers to Norair Avenue while allowing smaller trucks and delivery vehicles to use that entrance, given that these delivery vehicles will already be on Norair Avenue to deliver packages to the residential community beyond. Staff has reviewed the proposed revisions to conditions 4A and 4E and find them acceptable. Next slide. In conclusion, based on the findings presented in the technical staff report, staff recommend that the planning board approve this preliminary plan of subdivision 4-23033 and variation from section 24-121A3, subject to the findings and conditions in the staff report, with conditions 4A and 4E as revised by applicant's Exhibit 1. This concludes staff presentation. Thank you.
Ms. Gupta. Commissioners, questions for staff? I have one. Can you go back to slide 10? Yeah, I'm just trying to understand. I'm thinking of Central Avenue and trying to understand. Staff is saying that you are comfortable with this truck turning path, even though it's right in, right out, this truck turning path on Central Avenue?
Yes, this was the truck turning for the largest truck possible that can enter the site, a large tractor trailer. And that's what the applicant submitted for review.
And so to staff, it makes more sense for these to come in and out off of Central Avenue than off the side street?
That's correct. They would not be able to come off Norair Avenue. And our transportation staff is also on the line to further explain the analysis and the truck turning. If you want to get more technical.
Yeah, it just looks pretty problematic to have this big of a wide turning, requiring trucks, assuming that this is going to be the truck turning lane. Now, granted, it's not that frequent, but it looks pretty disruptive on a major thoroughfare.
Yeah, so the applicant did also submit a truck management plan. And so they do plan to restrict truck movement, the deliveries, the trash trucks to the site at certain times of the day. So I believe the applicant can talk further about those plans.
Okay, that's helpful to hear. Okay, all right, thank you. I don't have any other questions. Commissioners, any other questions for staff?
No, but I think you raised a good point. So is this saying that the trucks are going to come out of Central Avenue and cross the lanes of traffic?
Well, and I would just offer to whomever's going to respond to this one more thing. It's like, okay, well, they can enter into the site, but then it's not clear where the turnaround is.
Mhm.
But they have to go back out onto Central Avenue. So.
Hi, Chair Shapiro and members of the board. I'm Benjamin Ryan with the Transportation Planning Section. So upon acceptance of the case, it was important to see how heavy vehicles circulated into the site, within the site, and out of the site. And we knew early on we did not want the trucks to interfere with Norair Avenue, which is a road that leads to a residential area only. And upon acceptance, we actually asked the applicant to close the access point along Norair Avenue. They submitted this truck turning plan, which shows that in order for a heavy vehicle to navigate within the site, it would need to go all the way to Norair Avenue in order to back up to make the necessary deliveries.
Mr. Ryan, the truck will go up to, but not out onto Norair Avenue. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. That's correct. And it would access the site along Central Avenue, do a 3-point turn within the property, and then depart along Central Avenue.
This is your all's professional opinions, which I super appreciate. This is not the only store that has to figure out how to manage deliveries coming in and off site, right? Mm-hmm. Every store has to deal with this. My slightly layperson's read says this one looks especially thorny, given its location, given Central Avenue, given the tight parking lot that they have. This feels like a mess.
It is a very tight site, for sure. I would say that based on the available frontage along Central Avenue, one right in, right out access point was sufficient. And we really did not want to steer any truck traffic along Norair Avenue, which only has one lane of travel in each direction.
Right. I guess it's just a broader argument around whether this is an appropriate use in this location.
Yes, and as the transportation planner, I don't evaluate that. So.
Okay. Commissioners, other thoughts, reactions, questions before we hear from the applicant?
Not really, but I still would like some further. I'm with you, and thank you so much for raising it, Mr. Chairman. Because we all know how busy Central Avenue is, and maybe there's some context around how other businesses handle it. Because there are some small lot businesses already on Central Avenue, so I just don't know how it's managed. I wouldn't, but maybe somebody with some insight can help us, because it just seems, so they pull in off Central Avenue and then they've got to back up towards Norair Avenue, which seems, I don't know, kind of problematic, because if I'm trying to enter on Norton Avenue, I can't until this big truck backs up and then proceeds out. And then I would go back to Commissioner Giraldo's question, turning into the site off Central. At least this illustration looks like they're doing so from one of the center lanes. and not the right, the lane closest to the site. Just some additional comments to be
Well, let's hear
addressed.
from staff. Let's hear from the applicant, and we'll continue the conversation. And again, this is preliminary plan of subdivision. We're not looking at the detailed site plan. So there's some, and Mr. Goldsmith, I'm sure will elucidate on that, what from his perspective is appropriate, what's fair game for the preliminary plan of subdivision versus the detailed site plan if it comes to that. So all right, if there's no further questions for staff, let's turn to the applicant, Mr. Goldsmith.
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Board. I'm Peter Goldsmith with the law firm Shirley & Brewer in their Bowie office. First, I want to go back to the prior agenda item because unlike Principal Counsel Warner, I am a proud graduate of the University of Maryland College Park and attended the first game at the Xfinity Center, last game at Cole Fieldhouse, and I want to thank the board very, very much for their recommendation of approval for the basketball team's performance center. And it's been cool to see them grow into that facility for the last 20 years. And I certainly support anything that's going to help the basketball team consistently beat Mr. Warner's Northwestern Wildcats. But I am here for agenda item 6 here on behalf of the applicant, which is an affiliate of Wright Partners, who is the developer of the subject property. First, want to thank Ms. Gupta and Mr. Benjamin Ryan with the Transportation Planning section for their input on this application. As the board has recognized, this is a very small property with tight turning radius, and we've gone back and forth with them as well. And also want to thank them for taking time out of one of their evenings to attend a virtual neighborhood meeting. As the board knows, your staff always goes above and beyond, and we certainly appreciate that. So here with me is Jay Lustig on behalf of Wright Partners and AutoZone, Matt Polhouse with IMEG, our civil engineer, Nancy Randall with Wells & Associates, our traffic engineer. And they're here to answer questions or address any points of rebuttal if needed, but I'll probably lean on them to address some of the board's questions that they just raised. But at bottom, as the chair recognizes, this is just a preliminary plan of subdivision application. So it's in essence just a request to consolidate 3 lots into 1 commercial parcel and also a variation request to section 24-121A3 of the prior subdivision regulations for an access point onto Central Avenue. And without that access onto Central Avenue, we would be required to direct all commercial traffic onto the residential street of Norair. And so in other words, were the planning board not to grant that variation, all of these commercial trucks, I think, would have to turn onto Norair and could possibly block traffic. And so we are asking for a variation so that we don't have to do that. And I think I'm actually just going to turn right to Mr. Polhouse if he wants to just touch on the truck turning plan right there, and what it essentially shows, and I think he can back me up on this, is that the trucks are going to make a right turn, make a gentle left turn, and then be able to back up and then drive straight out back onto Central Avenue. And we're not talking about delivery trucks happening all the time. It's my understanding that they are just going to be coming once a week and sit idle there for less than an hour. And Mr. Lustig, of course, can add some context to that as well. But I'll let Mr. Polhouse elaborate.
Let me swear in the other folks. So I have Mr. Lustig, Mr. Polhouse, Ms. Randall. I think that's the 3 of you. If you all could raise your right hands, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that your testimony will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, consider yourself under oath. And I believe we're going to start with Mr. Lustig. Is that what you said, Mr. Goldsmith?
Let's start with Mr. Polhouse because the board was, I think, primarily focused on the truck turning and maneuvering.
Thanks. For the record, Matthew Polhouse with IMEG, with civil on the project. As it was being explained, so yes, the anticipated truck turning movements will come off of Central Avenue. This will be further reviewed and refined during the next stage of the development, assuming we get there. But basically, trucks will turn right off of Central Avenue into the property. And given the shape, unique shape and size of this property, we essentially designed the parking lot around a 3-point turn for a delivery truck. So you'll see larger radius, a 25-foot curb radius as you enter the property, which allows for a larger turning movement. And we don't have any curb protrusions that extend into the parking area as soon as you enter into the parking lot on site, which allows a larger truck to make a quick left-hand turn inside the parking area. They'll proceed toward Norair and straighten out, and then back into the loading space towards the rear of the property. Once that reverse maneuver has been completed, they're essentially pointing straight back out towards 214. This happens fairly quickly. These truck drivers do this every day at every stop they go to. We don't anticipate a whole lot of obstruction to other people on property. Once the loading operation is complete and they've done what they need to do on site, they're pointing straight out towards 214, and they'll just make a right onto 214.
And if I may add, Matt, thank you, Jay Love with Bright Partners. It's important to know that deliveries are only made by AutoZone trucks by AutoZone drivers. So it's not a random third-party transportation company with a different driver every week. It's the same driver coming from the distribution center making the same route every week to make these deliveries. So these drivers become very familiar with the site layout and how to navigate the site. And as Matt mentioned, it's once per week, and they're there for less than 1 hour. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's stick with questions on this if we can, just because you all have brought it to us. And also, Mr. Warner, just make sure that we're not stepping too far beyond what's appropriate for a preliminary plan of subdivision versus detailed site plan. Does this feel on task?
Thank you, Chair Shapiro. David Warner, Principal Counsel. Yes, it's at preliminary plan of subdivision. You need to determine in this case whether allowing access on Central Avenue meets the requirements for a variation, because under the subdivision regulations, it's not allowed. And so it is very important. It can be a little bit confusing when you look at this diagram that says AutoZone, because you're not looking at the use. And it can be a little confusing when you have all of the parking layout there. Certainly the parking layout may enter into your discussion about whether it's going to be safe to come in and out of that entrance. But when you do get the site plan, you're going to be able to determine whether the parking, the loading, and that circulation on the site is all sufficient. So, you know, right now you look at trucks pulling into a parking lot and blocking a bunch of parking spaces, you know, that might be an issue you talk about at site plan. But for right now, you're just looking at, would it be safe? Essentially, you're just looking at, would it be safe for the trucks that they talk about having serve this site come in and off Central Avenue in the way they've described, and staff says because of the very few number of trucks that will be doing so, they think it will be.
All right, thank you. Thanks for that, helpful. All right, Commissioners, any other questions around this topic?
Yeah, well, first I'd like to say thank you, because I believe it was Mr. Paulahouse who made very clear what I'm looking at, because what you said is exactly not what I was thinking. Meaning I thought the trucks would turn right off of Central and then drive straight and then back into Norair. But your point is they would pull in the right turn off Central and actually make that left and then back into the end of the lot. That's correct? Okay. Right. Okay.
That's correct. The last thing we want anybody doing is backing out onto 214. So we designed it in such a way that they don't have to do that. All the turning movements are done on site.
Okay, and that's how. And then the other question was, someone mentioned, I don't know if it was staff or mentioned that there will be a limit on times when these trucks will access the site. if somebody can confirm that and articulate what those times are. Did I hear someone? I think Ms. Gupta may have, someone said that.
Ryan said it.
Oh, okay.
They said once a week.
No, but I mean like
Right,
time
but-
frame.
Right.
Yes, Commissioner. Yeah, I had mentioned that the applicant had submitted a truck management plan. And it's not part of the backup, but it's part of the case record. And I'll read it from there, what it says. It says deliveries from AutoZone corporate suppliers will typically occur once a week. And that's what Mr. Paulhouse said. And delivery will be scheduled during the weekdays and will occur outside of the adjacent street peak hours. It doesn't specify any time, but it says outside of adjacent street peak hours.
Sounds like
And
non-rush
it's same
hour.
thing.
Yeah.
Same thing is listed for trash pickup. And it says trucks larger than a WB65 will not be permitted to make deliveries to the site.
Okay. Well, that's helpful. It does seem that there is some concern given to, because Central Avenue rush hour is like, you just don't want to be there. So in a car or a truck. That's it for me, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much.
I have a question.
Yes.
So it's still with the design, and maybe it's just the design itself that's shown on the screen. But will the trucks be able to turn into the lot from the right lane? Are they going to have? Is it there's enough space for it to make that turn from just the right lane?
So what I would expect to see as we refine this at the next stage of development, when we finalize the building and the parking lot, we can certainly provide additional turning movements for different vehicle types. This particular type of vehicle is a WB65. There are smaller tractor trailers and articulated delivery trucks that drive the roads. And then, an SU30, like a little UPS truck, is even smaller than that. So if the question is where all these turning movements will happen, I think those are additional exhibits that we can give you at time of site plan as we finalize the parking lot layout.
Well, my question is even simpler. I want to know whether or not when the tractor trailer is turning right into the parking area, whether there's enough space for it to turn just from the right lane as opposed to having to use one of the other lanes to make the swing.
Understand. So this vehicle, WB65, as the parking lots contemplated at this point in time, I believe it would hit the inside corner curb interior to the site. If we want to try and push that all the way to the right, we would have to take a look at modifying the internal parking lot layout a little bit and see what we can do to place that vehicle in the right-hand lane. And again, that's kind of getting into the final site layout, which I would suggest is getting us over more towards the site plan review than a preliminary plan subdivision.
Mr. Paulhouse, I think you would agree. I think you would agree that there are several delivery trucks that are able to make that right-hand turn and then make that U-turn safely. And then, of course, we're gonna address the safety of vehicular and pedestrian circulation as soon as the site design is finalized, and then we will get into those specifics at detailed site plan.
Well,
and the other thing I do want to note here is under.
Hold on one second.
I just want to note real quick.
Ms. Polis, hold on
Under-
1 sec. Hold on, I just want to make sure Mr. Giraldo had his,
It's still not clear to me. My question is real simple. Will the truck be able to make the turn into the lot strictly from the right lane, or is it going to have to swing around to get, in other words, from the lane next to in order to get into the lot? That's my question.
And the answer, Mr. Paulhouse, you can refine it if necessary. The answer is there are several different size trucks that we are going to take a look at. And there are certain size delivery trucks that can make that turn from the right-hand lane.
So
And of course, we're going to be required to make sure that delivery trucks are making safe turns in there.
So, will the W65 be able to make that turn? Because that's what you guys said is going to be used to make the deliveries. So that's my question. The vehicle that they said that they're going to use, is that vehicle able from the right lane to make that turn without having to swing into the lane adjacent to it?
But we haven't committed to a size truck delivery at this point. And I think all this is showing, I guess, is the WB65.
Yeah, if I can interrupt and assist Mr. Giraldo. I mean, right here on our screen, this is coming from the applicant. The evidence shows a truck turning path that colors all 3 lanes. So I think that answers your question.
That's my point. It's my point.
It's showing right here. So I think the answer is according to this exhibit, yes, they will have to use up to 3 lanes to turn.
That was my concern in terms of with the variation, because that would you're going to have a truck take all 3 lanes to make that turn. You've got cars coming on the right, the center lane. If you want to actually avenue, I think it needs to be a little more definitive in terms of what type of truck you're going to use, because that's only going to create greater havoc and a dangerous situation.
So a question around our process too, Commissioner and others. What's before us is whether or not we allow this variation. Is it fair game if we could say no? If we say yes, is this the stage where we're designing the entrance, or are we just flagging this, and when we get to detailed site plan, then we make sure that, one option would be, since I'm not an engineer, is it's a much wider entrance so that a bigger truck can take an easier turn. But is that for preliminary plan subdivision, or is that for detailed site plan?
Well, Mr. Chairman, you could find that you could grant the variation and add a condition in there that has, at the time of detailed site plan, there be some kind of way of addressing this particular issue that Mr. Giraldo thinks may be a reason not to grant the variation. Again, you're trying to figure out right now if the granting of this variation is going to be detrimental to public safety, health, or welfare to other properties. Obviously, that includes the property outside this site. And so you do have to make the decision that Mr. Giraldo is bringing up. But yeah, you could condition there be changes at detailed site plan to address some of his concerns with granting the variation.
Right, that's helpful. Appreciate that. And Commissioner Giraldo, I know that's helpful for you, but it feels like a path forward.
It is, but one other question, Mr. Warner. Can we say you can have the variation, but you cannot use a truck that only for one that can only make the right lane turn into it through the right lane without having to cross other lanes? Can that be a condition of the variation?
Well, if you feel that, if the board feels that condition is the only way to ensure that the public safety won't be injured, then certainly you could include that as a condition.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Warner.
Yeah, I just wonder if that's prudent, though, given that there's not been an opportunity to come back based on the questions that we've had. I think I like the first getting ahead of ourselves, Mr. Chairman, perhaps, but the suggestion of adding a condition in that says at the time of DSP, and Mr. Warner, help me with the language, we would have the opportunity to revisit the variation request based on, a revised vehicular circulation plan.
Almost, yeah, almost right. We wouldn't revisit the variation. The variation, you're either going to grant it or not today, but your condition will grant the variation subject to the applicant at the time of detailed site plan providing, a design that ensures the safe entrance and exit of trucks at this entrance or something along those lines.
Okay. Thank you.
Here's the problem.
In accordance with all applicable guidelines.
Right. Yeah, because we have SHA, for instance, has said they have no problem with this entrance. So that's, the staff report says that. So there are regulations, though, that will impact how, exit and entrances to sites are made to be safe. So exactly what Peter is saying.
Mr. Giraldo?
I mean, I could go with Commissioner Washington is suggesting, but the concern I have is the way this is designed, and we're approving this variation based upon the way this is designed. It shows the tractor trailer basically taking up 3 lanes to get in. And so
this is an illustration.
Commissioner
at this point,
spoke well about the way the traffic is on Central Avenue.
Right, but I think Commissioner Giraldo, I'm 100% with you. The way I'm looking at this, though, is that if we were to approve this variation, we're sending a very, very clear message to the applicant that heads up. When this comes to detailed site plan, assuming we do approve this, then we're going to be looking at this issue, and you better come to us with a design that does not have trucks turning from the center lane. I don't care about the size of the truck. I just want to make sure that they're not swinging in. So that's probably, the engineers are going to tell us, that probably is going to mean a wider entrance, and that little nubbing on the left is going to need to go away. But again, that's me not being a civil engineer and thinking there are solutions to this problem, and they just need to come to us at detailed site plan with a solution.
Okay, that's satisfactory.
Right.
Okay. Okay, so Mr. Goldsmith, more from you. Anything else that you have for us as the applicant here?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. And thank you, commissioners. And one thing I also want to point out is we're trying to avoid trucks swinging in on Nor-Air and making that turn, because there's a possibility that it could cause queuing on Central Avenue and block Nor-Air and block residential traffic, which is what we're really trying to avoid here as well. Now there's, of course there's other context here that I think is important to bring to your attention. And I won't stray too far afield here, but I know we've got a couple community members signed up, and I want to address a few more things up front. And what I believe, their primary point of tension is the use of this property as an auto parts store. And more specifically, it's an auto parts store that is across the street from a property on which the board approved applications related to an Advance Auto Parts well over a year ago. And the board can see the 2 vacant properties on slide 1. If you zoom in a little bit, I think you might be able to see this better. And so, but the similarities between the 2 projects and the fact that they're competitors. And of course, the use is not before the board today, but I'm going to tie this into the variation request. And so, to refresh the board's recollection, the board did grant a variation to allow 2 access points on Central Avenue with no access on Nor-Air for that property. And their building, if it is constructed, it will be between the 2 access points, pulled to the front of the site, and there will be traffic flowing around it like a horseshoe. But because of the differences in the 2 sites, we can't accommodate that traffic flow. And one notable difference is that they have 1.14 gross acres, and there are 4 lots there. This subject property is 0.82 gross acres and 3 lots, so it's almost a third of an acre smaller. And at the time of the board's approval for their application, there was no traffic light at the intersection of Nor-Air and Central Avenue. Now there is one. It's there now. It's a brand new traffic light. And so, we're also asking for access onto Nor-Air, and without that access, customers coming from the west would have to drive either way down 214 and make a U-turn or make a turn on a Bright Seat and then turn around in order to make a right turn from a sole access onto Central Avenue. And that would make the operation of a successful retail store completely infeasible. And their customers can at least make a U-turn at the new traffic light and turn right in to their property off of Central Avenue. And I've studied the board's approval of that project and the questions that were raised there. And I just want to emphasize that this is going to be an auto zone with no installation bays. So it's just going to be a retail store. And planning staff is conditioning continental crosswalks at both entrances and the installation of 5-foot sidewalks for pedestrian safety. The sidewalks currently aren't in great shape. And so we're going to install new sidewalks there. And as we've mentioned, this is a low traffic count use, especially when compared to fast food restaurants and other more auto-centric uses. And so we, again, we'll address pedestrians and auto and circulation and safety within the site at the time of DSP when we come back. But something also worth mentioning that the chair just raised, I think shows, and that the chair actually raised at the other hearing, I think is looking at staff's PowerPoint slide number 4 would be helpful. If we can. And this has to do with the use, whether the use is appropriate here. And as shown, this is something that the chair raised at their hearing. Most of their property is located within the local transit-oriented edge zone, and that zone prohibits this type of use. And so most of their property is actually located within a general plan local transit center, and so that they applied under the prior zoning ordinance because it was prohibited. The entirety of this property, however, is within the commercial general office zone, which is, if we were developing under the current zoning ordinance, it would allow it as a special exception, meaning the use is presumptively compatible with this property. And this property is not within a general plan center. And back in the early 2000s, there was actually a medical office building that was approved for this site, but it wasn't built and nothing has been built, and it's been sitting vacant for decades, just like their property, even though the master plan shows all of these properties along Central Avenue as commercial. But I think because we opted to develop under the prior zoning ordinance, I think we'll actually make for a more attractive site because the development district standards are legally binding on us, whereas under the current zoning ordinance, they wouldn't be. And so we're trying to be thoughtful about where the building's located, trying to make it more urban, pulling it closer to the road. And also in this case, the board has jurisdiction over the detailed site plan, where if we had gone under the special exception, the board would just be making a recommendation. So we do, again, look forward to bringing the detailed site plan to the board. And we do hear your message about the turn off of Central Avenue. And so we will go back and look closely at that. I have previously spoken with Mr. Borofsky and Mr. Pascal, both of whom I think have signed up. They may both be on today, and they both attended a voluntary virtual neighborhood meeting that we held on Monday. And regardless of our positions, I do appreciate their concerns. We have certainly opened up our lines of communication to them and others in the community as well. And so with that, I'll stop here. And the board doesn't have any questions for us. We do ask for approval of the preliminary plan subdivision and the variation request. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Goldsmith. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant before we hear from the community? No further questions. All right. So for the public hearing, we have 2 folks who signed up to speak. Mr. Borofsky, I see. Do we have Mr. Pascal as well? We do not. So Mr. Borofsky, I'm going to swear you in. I don't see you anymore. Where'd you go? There you are. All right. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that your testimony will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Mr. Chairman, I do.
Okay. Consider yourself sworn in. And we don't have the other person, so I don't see. All right, Mr. Borofsky, I'm going to put 3 minutes up on the clock to help put a clock up there to help guide our time. If you need a little bit more time, we'll be a bit flexible, of course. And take it away. The introduce yourself for the record, and the floor is yours.
I'm Yuri Borowski. I'm a resident who accesses my homes from Navarre Avenue, which is the only way in and out of our neighborhood of around 140 homes, which is why all the traffic that's going to happen at that intersection is paramount to our life and safety. It's also the only pedestrian way legally at this time out of that neighborhood to go to the metro. Now we climb through the woods where the county forgets to go to us a shortcut, but that legally is the way in and out. So basically there's a lot at stake at that intersection for us. I also would like to say I appreciate the extra time. Since Mr. Pascal is not here, also there were about other 5 residents who were on the call. So I want to say it deeply grieves me that I'm the only one member from the community who came to speak here. It's just really, really personally grieves me that we had such a good meeting, so many good questions with the applicant, and people are not here today. People whose properties are literally backing up to this car parts store and have not just their safety, but their property valuations online. It's irrelevant to the hearing, but it is very heavy on my heart right now. Now, I want to start with a heartfelt thank you to the commissioners for the high quality deliberation and pondering very fundamental questions that, as I understand, Mr. Warner confirmed are appropriate at this stage. Chairman, I particularly appreciate you touching on the question whether this is an appropriate use for the lot. That's what I've heard you say, maybe misheard, but I would like to note that the identical business that was approved last year at the Auto Parts store has a bigger lot, as applicant today mentioned. They have also a smaller store square footage. They have more parking space to maneuver their trucks. And indeed, they were provided with a special SHA approval for a second driveway to turn around. So this is a smaller lot, bigger store, less parking space to maneuver. And it's a second car parts store in 100 feet distance, which brings to the question of whether the MIU zoning is even being honored with its smart growth and neighborhood enhancement, all that stuff. The other part is also, I want to point out that's an excellent question from Commissioner Giraldo, and I really appreciate Commissioner Giraldo's interrogation. It's not clear how many, there's a lot of variables that I've heard being discussed here, and it's really not clear to me, professionals who bring this case before you have worked out all the variables for a really good decision to be made today. What I'm hearing is a lot of those things are the cans being kicked down the road. And forgive me for saying that, my experience is that when the envelope is pushed, it comes out at the expense of the community that lives here, but also at the community of Greater Prince George's who drive on Central Avenue. Because every time something is kicked down the road, it's taking a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And again, it really grieves me to see that a lot of the fundamental details aren't worked out, but our esteemed board is being pressured to make a decision today. The other thing I'd like to point out that, the conversation was so dense, packed, that I had to rewrite my notes on the spot. Important aspect, customers. We've talked a lot about the trucks, and indeed, the trucks were a big part of our conversation with the applicant when we met last week. The other problem are the customers. Indeed, we now are blessed with a traffic light at Central Avenue. I love the traffic light keeps my 15-month-old baby safe when I bring home from daycare every single day, because we don't have a shortcut to walk to the metro with a stroller. Note for Council Brooks. Anyway, the problem is there's only 3 cars that can fit in the left turn, and no more cars can fit there. That left turn on Central Avenue is so short that I sometimes find myself, I can't fit my car there because there's already 3 vehicles there. So I have to move there. So if we put this store here with already the traffic warning that the other store is going to bring, that is going to create a major usage of that intersection. And the usage is not going to be pedestrians from the metro and bicyclists from the metro. It is a car parts store, so everyone is obviously going to drive to buy their parts there. So I'm really concerned for the usage. The other thing I want to say is I object to the applicant request to waive the bike lane, and I object to the staff recommendation to kick that can down to SHA, modified with written correspondence from the operating agency, because we have been previously misled this time last year by the Advanced Auto Park renderings that showed a bike lane on Central Avenue. So I supported, okay, I agreed with them not to put a bike lane there. And then later, under a lot of pressure, State Highway Administration told me that apparently bike lane is not going to happen on Central Avenue. They said it may happen. And then after a lot of interrogation, I got an email saying that it is not in the plans to happen there. So where is that bike lane going to go? Again, we are failing to deliver on the excellent work of the countywide planning department of your agency that envisioned this beautiful vision, this blue line corridor that I used the same background from the last year's hearing. So there's just so many things out of balance here that I'm really, really concerned. Thank you for the extra time. I'll stop with my notes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Borowski. Appreciate you taking the time and your patience with us. We don't have anyone else who's signed up to speak, I don't believe. We will turn to the applicant who will have the last word. I would appreciate if you could address some of the issues that you've heard from Mr. Borowski. I recognize that a number of those issues are more pertinent to a detailed site plan than the preliminary plan, but if you could do your best, Mr. Goldsmith, and turn back to you.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you very much. I'm going to turn to Ms. Randall if she's ready for me here. I just want her to put on the record the amount of trips that this use is going to generate.
Yes, for the record, good morning. Nancy Randall with Wells and Associates. The trip generation from the property is very low. It's just one of the lower trip generation rates for commercial use. Automobile parts sales will generate 18 AM peak hour trips. That's over the course of 1 hour. That's 10 vehicles in and 8 out. And in the PM peak hour, it's 21 new peak hour trips. The PM peak hour, we take into consideration pass-by trips that would be, Mr. Smith is driving by, remembers he needed to get a fuse or a battery, whatever it may be, and would come off of 214, not Norair, or not from the Norair traffic. And so 21 new trips would occur in the PM peak hour. Or if you consider the pass-by trips, a total of 36, with 17 in and 19 out. That's over the course of an entire hour. The majority of those trips are actually going to occur off of Maryland 214, not Norair. This takes into consideration all trips to the site. So the customer, the employees, as well as FedEx or post office, UPS trips, as well as delivery. But as we've already said, we're going to have a truck management plan. So delivery vehicles would not, the corporate delivery vehicles would not occur during this time, nor would trash pickup occur during the AM or the PM peak hour. I hope that helps explain the low volume of traffic that would occur, both combination of inbound and outbound for this use.
I appreciate that, Ms. Randall.
Thank you, Ms. Randall.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I'll wrap this up. Thank you very much. I just want to just to Mr. Borowski's points, and I do appreciate all the conversations that I've had with him. I know he's very passionate about his neighborhood, and I respect that very much. He mentioned that we are we're kicking the can down the road here, and really it's just there's a scope of what's applicable here to the subdivision application and what's applicable to the detailed site plan, and we're doing our best not to address everything that we can for this application, and then we will when appropriate address it there at detailed site plan. And we did show the community at the community meeting our concept layout for the detailed site plan, so that way we weren't hiding the ball. We wanted to show them where we think the building's going to be located, how many parking spaces are going to be there. We think that we're actually going to be able to provide more parking than is required. And we're certainly not we're not asking to waive a bike lane or anything at all. It's up to SHA. It's in their right of way, and that's not what the condition says. We are just asking to just wanted to clarify that the bike lane, if SHA requires it, will be provided in the existing right of way, and we're certainly willing to provide that. Mr. Brodsky has my cell phone number, and he's got all of our information. If he needs to reach out to us, the lines of communication, as we said, are always open. And so, with that, I will close. I want to thank the commissioners for the questions. As always, it's great to see you, and we do ask for approval of the preliminary plan and the variation request. And we do hear you and appreciate your comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, commissioners, if there's no further questions for staff or the applicant, I will close the public hearing, and it is to us for deliberation and or a motion. Any thoughts, reactions, questions, comments before we consider action? All right, the only thing I'd say is, I'm sorry, did somebody have? No. The only thing I'd say is you've heard us loud and clear. We have all sorts of concerns around this, and we look forward to a thoughtful, assuming we take positive action here, and this comes before us with detailed site plan, we're looking forward to a very thoughtful approach to it. But again, my lay engineer in me says it sounds like you're going to need a little less parking and a little bit more open space as trucks, a wider opening as trucks come in and turn left into there to do that backup. So, but we'll let the experts figure all that out. All right, commissioners, is there further deliberation? I would look for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the findings of staff and approve preliminary plan 4-23033 and approve variation from section 24-121A3, subject to the applicant at the time of detailed site plan providing evidence of safe ingress and egress off of Maryland 214, along with the conditions as outlined in staff's report and is further modified by applicant exhibit number 1.
Second. Got a motion by Commissioner Washington and a second by Commissioner Dorner, I believe. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none.
Discussion?
Just on discussion. Yeah, on discussion, I just wanted to put up for consideration.
I was wondering whether Commissioner Washington.
Commissioner Giraldo, I have Commissioner Dorner first, and then you.
Yeah. I just want to
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Commissioner Dorner, you're on.
Okay, just for kind of consideration, when you go back, Mr. Goldsmith, and you're looking at the actual site plan, some of the parking spaces that are on that like northwestern side might be better fitted behind the building. Then you're going to get a better turning radius on the trucks potentially. I don't know if you could put them back there. That would be more consistent with sort of the new urbanism design where we would have more of the street frontage happening with the buildings and then parking behind instead of parking on the same street side. So there might be kind of unique ways of doing that and kind of like hiding them behind the site instead of over there and being potentially blocked by the truck or running into kind of issues with turning. And then I'll just throw it out there that if there is a minimum parking space requirement for this site, it might be useful to see whether or not there's a variation or some sort of an exception of having a lower amount if you don't need it on this particular site. And that might help you get rid of some of the blocking of the trucks within there. And I'd encourage you to think about, I would be supportive of fewer parking spaces there if it's not really needed, if it's just sort of a code thing, but you don't think you're going to actually be occupying that much, just so you get a little bit less kind of conflicts within there. And I would also encourage you to think about just like unique ways that you could design that if you do move the parking spaces, where you're not just putting a bunch of asphalt down just for like a truck to turn around. But maybe you could think of a way where it's almost like a continuum of the space within there. So maybe you have like an art design, a drawing, or a picture or something in there, and the trucks have to like go up a little bit on the ramp that leads out. But they're only doing that for a couple minutes each time that they're going in, and otherwise, like, you have kind of a nicer space that isn't just like a slab of asphalt there, and kind of would incorporate a nicer view, because this use, while we're not looking at the use, it is a little bit of a harsher one than residential or kind of other uses within there, and that might be a way of blending it in a little bit better and making it a little bit nicer.
Well said, thank you. Other discussion, Commissioner Giraldo?
Yeah, I was going to ask if Commissioner Washington would accept a friendly amendment to the motion, and with regards to reserving it for the specific design plan, rather than just have something subjective like that's to the safety of the residents or the safety of the public, whether she would agree to say that comes up with a plan where the truck just turns from the right lane only and does not cross over into other lanes.
My concern with that is we're pre-assuming the outcome of what they've heard and what they're going to come back to us with. So I'd rather make a decision, because at the end of the day, once we get to DSP, if we don't like what we see, we just don't approve it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, so
Yeah.
I'm not an engineer. I don't know that we are having sitting engineers amongst ourselves. So I would really like to hear and see what they come back with. And they've heard you loud and clear. They've heard me loud and clear, the chairman loud and clear. Commissioner Dorner has just made some thoughtful, incremental comments and input. I don't want to be judge and jury before I hear the full trial, so.
Yeah, yes.
Long-winded no, Ms. Commissioners.
And I could add one
Ms.
thing
Bailey as well,
to assist Mr. Giraldo with that before we move on to Ms. Bailey. Just a point of clarification. A detailed site plan, the design of driveway entrances to the site have to minimize conflict with off-site traffic. So that's a finding you have to make in a detailed site plan.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Warner.
That was much more artful than my response.
And much more than artful than what I was going to say. I was simply going to say that we have other opportunities to make some other decisions. This is not the final decision, and I'm sure you know that much better than I do, but we will just keep our eyes and ears open.
All right, it's a very helpful discussion. Appreciate all of your thoughts and leadership on this, folks. With that, if there's no further discussion, I will call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Thanks, everybody, for the robust conversation. Much appreciated. All right, move on quickly to item 7 on our agenda, STP 1901-02, Preserve at Westphalia. Mr. Tedesco is representing the applicant. We have Ms. Natalia Gomez Rojas, who's going to be giving us a staff presentation. I'm going to ask folks to be brief on this. We've got an executive session that we've got to get to in a few minutes. I will start with staff. Ms. Gomez.
Good afternoon. I'm running a quick sound check.
Yeah, and one thing I've neglected to say, this is an evidentiary hearing. If I need to swear anyone in, I'll do it at the appropriate time. But Ms. Gomez, take it away. We can hear you fine.
I'll be really quick. So good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the Planning Board. For the record, I'm Natalia Gomez with the Urban Design Section. Item number 7 on the agenda is a specific design plan SDP-1901-02 titled Preserve at Westphalia, which requests to amend the previously approved SDP-1901 for the development of a community building with associated swimming pool and parking and a parking lot on a portion of Parcel R. This amendment also includes minor adjustments to previously approved landscaping and revisions to recreational facilities on Parcel A and Parcel H of the development, which are consistent with prior approvals. The subject property is located in the northwest quadrant of the intersection of Westphalia Road and Ritchie Marlborough Road, and this application has been reviewed and evaluated accordance with the prior zoning ordinance. In conclusion, the urban design section recommends that the planning board adopt the findings presented and approve the specific design plan SDP-1901-02, subject to the conditions found in the staff report. This concludes the staff presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gomez. Commissioners, any questions for staff? Seeing none, we'll turn to the applicant. And while I see Mr. Tedesco, I'm wondering if Ms. Lockhart is there too.
She is here, yes.
Okay, all right. We just wanted to say that we miss her and we're sad that she abandoned us, but welcome to her new home. There she is. Hello. Hello, Trader. How are you?
Look at that view, Commissioner.
I know, I'm telling you. All right, Mr. Tedesco, take it away. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Matthew Tedesco on behalf of the owner applicant, Stanley Martin Companies, LLC, along with Ms. Lockhart, as well as our design team from Rogers Consulting, and members of the Stanley Martin team are with us as well. And we also have Mr. Mike Lenhart from Lenhart Traffic and Consulting with us. Hearing the chairman's preamble before this case, I will be very brief. I will abandon my pre-prepared comments and thank Ms. Gomez for her review and recommendations in this case. I also want to thank the Historic Preservation Commission, both the board as well as Mr. Smith and Mr. Gross for their review. This property is part of an overall larger community now known as Westmore. On your screen, the property outlined in red is currently under development, with homes being delivered here very soon. The property to screen view left, west on the map, is Parkland Rock Creek, which is an SDP that will come before you a little bit to the right. It'll come before you very soon, right there. Just to the south of that is Meadows, Westphalia Meadows, which is another Stanley Martin project that will come before you soon as well. Overall, this entire assemblage of property is now known as Westmore, this now being overlook at Westmore. And what we are doing here today, as Ms. Gomez-Roa has indicated, is we are taking the original SDP had a clubhouse. It was about a 1,700 square foot clubhouse in the northeast portion of the property. We are relocating it kind of to the southwest parcel R location to make it more centrally located to all of the Westmore development. We've also increased the size from 1,700 square feet to almost 6,000 square feet and added a pool. All of those details are provided in your backup. I won't elaborate further, but we did take design cues from the historic barn, the Talbert Historic Barn that is on the property across the street from this parcel itself, and took cues from that, which were very well received by the Historic Preservation Commission and your Historic Preservation Commission staff. So with that, Mr. Chairman, we have believed that gone well above and beyond the recreational requirements for this project. All other recreational amenities are still being provided. We have, as I mentioned, improved and increased the size of the clubhouse to better fit it with the overall development that will ultimately be the entire Westmore community that will be made up of both the Overlook, Rock Creek, Parkland Rock Creek, as well as Meadows. And you will see those SDPs for those other projects that will balance out the rest of this community very, very soon. And with that, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we thank you for your time and indulgence, and certainly request your favorable approval of this application.
Thank you, Mr. Tedesco. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? Seeing none, we don't have anyone who signed up to speak on this. I will close the hearing and turn to you. What is your pleasure on this item, Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the findings of staff and approve SDP-1901-02 and Type 2 Tree Conservation Plan TCP 2-019-2021, subject to the conditions as outlined in staff's report.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Washington, second by Vice Chair Bailey. If there's no discussion, I will call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
I vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Thank you, Ms. Gomez. Thank you, Mr. Tedesco. Thank you, Ms. Lockhart. We will see you all again soon.
Thank you very much.
Next item on our agenda is item 8. This is preliminary plan of subdivision 4-23045 Steam Fitters property with Mr. Dugan is going to be representing the applicant. We have Mr. Diaz-Campbell give a staff presentation. This also is an evidentiary hearing, so if anyone is appropriate, I'll swear folks in as needed. I don't think we have any opposition on this. I'm going to ask staff and the applicant to be brief as well, and I'll start with you, Mr. Diaz-Campbell.
All right. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, I am Eddie Diaz-Campbell, Planner 3 with the subdivision section. Item number 8 on the agenda is the preliminary plan of subdivision for the Steam Fitters property, 4-23045. The subject project proposes 2 parcels to support an existing 59,124 square foot private trade school and proposed new parking garage. The application is subject to approved certificate of adequacy ADQ-2023-078. No members of the public have signed up to speak for this application. The applicant submitted 1 exhibit prior to the noon deadline on July 9, 2024. Applicant's Exhibit 1 includes requested revisions to the findings of the staff report, with which staff is in agreement. Staff will add findings to the resolution stating that the subject application was submitted prior to the formal April 1st, 2024 deadline for submission of new preliminary plans of subdivision under the prior zoning ordinance and subdivision regulations, and prior to the current April 1st, 2026 deadline for submission under the prior regulations. Staff recommend adoption of the findings of the technical staff report with modifications requested by applicant's Exhibit 1. Approval of Type 1 Tree Conservation Plan TCP 1-015-2024 and approval of the preliminary plan of subdivision, subject to conditions contained in the staff report. This concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz-Campbell. Commissioners, any questions for staff? Seeing none, we will turn to the applicant, Mr. Dugan. You can introduce the members of the team as you see fit, and take it away. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, members of the Planning Board. I'm Tim Dugan with the law firm Bean, Kinney & Corman. We have members of the development team here in case you do have questions, and that would be representatives from the Steam Fitters, Chris Modello, Gary Murdoch, and Mike Dent. We've got the general counsel for the Steam Fitters, Jennifer Kassman, on the line. From IMEG Civil Engineering, Matt Polhouse is on this case as well as from Wells & Associates Traffic Consultants, Nancy Randall, who you heard from a little bit earlier. In addition, we've got the MGMA architect, Steve Moore, on the phone, on the call as well. Very briefly, following my brief comments, Mr. Chris Modello for the Steam Fitters would like just a few moments to testify in support of the application. The applicant thanks the staff for all their hard work. The applicant accepts the staff's proposed conditions of approval, and we are reaffirming what Mr. Diaz just mentioned, and that is that the application was accepted for review on March 29th of 2024, and thus the application met the already codified April 1st, 2024 deadline under Section 24-1901. And of course, it also met the extended deadline of the April 1st, 2026, pursuant to the pending Council Bill CB 027-2024. Following Mr. Modello's comments, that will conclude the applicant's presentation, although we are available for any questions. I believe Mr. Modello is ready to be sworn in, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Dugan. Mr. Modello, do I see you or your audio only?
Mr. Modello is not online. I will speak on his behalf. My name is Michael Dent.
Mr. Dent, I don't see you in our sign-up sheet. Mr. Warner? I don't have a strong opinion about it one way or the other, if we're not in any major violations of our rules.
No, we have strict rule about that, Mr. Chairman. So we require people to sign up by noon on Tuesday. That's the same policy would apply to everybody.
All right, Mr. Dent, with all due
Yeah, I
respect,
signed up
my
last
attorney said I
Friday.
can't.
That's fine. I signed up last Friday, have confirmation from Ms. Jones of receiving that, but that's okay.
No worries about it, Mr. Dent. Okay, all right, so Mr. Dugan, back to you. Do you have anyone else who is on the sign-up sheet who you want to speak?
I believe not. I would ask for the board's approval, and we're available for any comments.
Okay, all right, I appreciate that. We have no one else who signed up to speak. Unless there's any questions for staff of the applicant, I'm going to close this public hearing and turn it over to you for deliberation, or if not, what is your pleasure on this item?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the findings of staff and the findings as amended by applicant exhibit number 1 and approve preliminary plan 4-23045 and TCP 1-015-2024, subject to the conditions as outlined in staff's report.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Washington, a second by Commissioner Giraldo. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I will call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Thanks, everybody. Mr. Dent, sorry for any confusion. Mr. Dugan, thank you for your time. And staff, Mr. Diaz-Campbell, thank you as always for all the good work.
Thanks, everyone.
We will now go on to item 9 on our agenda. This is Countywide Planning Division. We have a proposed designation of 2 historic sites in the county. We have Mr. Gross who will be giving the staff presentation on this. Mr. Gross, take it away.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Board. Just a quick mic check.
Yep, we can hear you fine. Thanks for checking.
Terrific, and I will be brief. For the record, my name is Tom Gross, Supervisor of the Historic Preservation Section. Item 9 is the proposed designation of 2 Prince George's County historic sites, the Blair Smith House at 5416 39th Street in Hyattsville, documented properties 68-010-94, and the Flynn Steck House at 4049 34th Street, Mount Rainier, documented property 68-074-04. At its public hearing on March 19, 2024, the Historic Preservation Commission reviewed the documentation prepared for these 2 properties and the staff recommendations on the proposed designations. Based on the documentation, the staff recommendations, and the support of the property owner applicants, the HPC recommended that the subject properties be designated as historic sites based on the criteria of County Code Section 29-104. Staff conveyed the HPC's recommendations at a joint public hearing held by the District Council and the Planning Board on June 4th, 2024. No additional testimony was provided by the close of the joint public hearing on June 19th, 2024. I'll briefly review the HPC's recommendations for the 2 properties. Next slide, please. First is the Blair Smith House, which is a circa 1931 Tudor Revival style dwelling, a modified version of the Bellwood model house sold by Sears Modern Homes. Next slide, please. The property was owned by Louise F. Blair in the 1930s and 40s. Miss Blair was a single woman who worked as a government clerk during World War II, later owned by Claude and Geraldine Smith. Claude Smith led a notable career as a veterinarian for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, in which role he oversaw the arrival of giant pandas Ling Ling and Sing Sing to the National Zoo in 1972. Next slide, please. The Historic Preservation Commission recommended that the Blair Smith House be designated as a historic site on the basis of 3 designation criteria, which you see here on your slide. Next slide, please. The second property is the Flynn Steck House, a circa 1905 house featuring an unusual roof structure and facade elements characteristic of the Queen Anne style. Next slide. This property was the home of the Flynn family, including noted author T.T. Flynn Jr., whose works included numerous spy and detective novels, as well as The Man from Laramie, adapted to film in 1955 with Jimmy Stewart. Property was later owned by Charles and Dot Steck, Charles being a highly prolific photographer and professional musician in the Washington, D.C. area. Next slide, please. The Historic Preservation Commission recommended that the Flynn Steck House be designated as a historic site based on 3 designation criteria of the subtitle seen here on your slide. And next slide, please. Should the planning board concur with the recommendation of the Historic Preservation Commission that the Blair Smith House and the Flynn Steck House be designated as Prince George's County Historic Sites, staff will prepare a transmittal letter from the planning board to the district council recommending historic site designation of these two properties. And this concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Gross. Commissioners, can we all agree that Mr. Gross does a very fun job?
Yeah, totally.
It can be. It can be.
Not always. Fair enough.
A fun job that he does very
well said. Commissioners, any questions for staff on these two items? Seeing none, then I would look for a motion.
Move approval, Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the recommendations of the HPC and approve transmittal of the letter to the district council indicating as such.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Washington, a second by Vice Chair Bailey. Any discussion on the motion?
Only that the Sears catalog homes were well before their time. If only I could buy one now, we would have much more affordable housing for sure.
Absolutely. Well said. If there's no further discussion, I will call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
I vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it. 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Gross.
Thank you.
All right, last item on our agenda before we get to our executive session is item 11. This is 4- Plan Subdivision 4-22033 Carosa property. This item was continued from June 20th. We have Mr. Horn, who is representing the applicant, I believe. Yes, Mr. Horn, there you are. We have Mr. Diaz Campbell's giving staff presentation. I think we have someone who signed up to speak in opposition as well. We'll verify that. This is Mr. Warner. This is not listed as an evidentiary hearing. Pardon my being ignorant on this.
Right, right now, we just have a request for a continuance. So if you grant the
I'm sorry. That's it. That's why I'm being scattered. This is just a request for continuance, commissioners. I apologize. Mr. Horn, well, let's start with Mr. Diaz-Campbell.
All right. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, I'm Eddie Diaz-Campbell, Planner 3 with the Subdivision Section. Item number 11 on the agenda is the preliminary plan subdivision for the Carosa property, 4-22033. The subject project proposes 199 lots and 39 parcels for the development of 199 single-family attached dwellings, 401 multifamily dwellings, and 50,000 square feet of commercial development. This case was continued from the Planning Board hearing of June 20, 2024. As a matter of housekeeping, staff received 2 exhibits for the record prior to the noon deadline on July 9, 2024. These include an email and supporting material from a citizen signed up to speak in opposition to the application. Staff is recommending a further continuance of the case in order to allow for additional time to evaluate adequate public facilities for the development. The evaluation requires further coordination of partner agencies to the planning department. The evaluation must be complete before the preliminary plan's associated certificate of adequacy 80Q-2022-014 can be approved. The certificate in turn must be approved prior to approval of the preliminary plan by the planning board. The applicant has indicated to staff they are in agreement to further continue the case. This concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz-Campbell. Mr. Horn, anything you would like to add on this fine item?
Yeah, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the planning board. For the record, Arthur Horn, law office Chipping Horn here in Largo, Maryland, here on behalf of the applicant. And Mr. Diaz-Campbell did a fantastic job of laying out everything. So there's nothing else for us to add.
Thank you, Mr. Horn. We do have somebody who signed up to speak. Mr. Askins, are you here? Are you on the line? And I know this is just a request for continuance, but still. All right, I don't see him. So commissioners, what is your pleasure on this item?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the request to continue preliminary plan 4-22033 to planning board hearing date of July 25, 2024.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Washington, a second by Vice Chair Bailey. If there's no discussion, I will call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
I vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner
I'm
Geraldo.
on the line right now.
Uh-oh. Mr. Askins?
Yes, I'm trying to coordinate by phone from my office. I thought it was being continued. I'm standing by.
Okay, Mr. Askins, hold 1 second. I'm going to allow, I'm going to provide a little leeway here. If the maker of the motion and the seconder of the motion are okay. I was in the midst of a roll call, but we'll fudge a little bit here, Mr. Askins. The only issue is, and I want to give you the opportunity to speak, there's nothing on the substance of the issue. This is only a request for a continuance that's before us. So, so do you have anything that you want to bring to us specifically on the request for a continuance?
No, I'm fine. I'm concur with the idea of a continuance, and I will hang up at this point.
Okay, Mr. Askins, thanks so much. Thanks for being flexible with us. So, commissioners, pardon our messiness, but we're still under our roll call. I said, Vice Chair Bailey, I believe you voted aye. As Commissioner Washington, Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Geraldo.
I vote aye.
All right, I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Diaz-Campbell. Thank you, Mr. Horn.
Thank you very much. Y'all have a great afternoon.
You too. So all that's left is our executive session. Before we jump off, Mr. Warner, we talked about this a bit informally. I believe that we actually can adjourn this meeting, just close it down. And what we were going to discuss in executive session, we can just use our technology and meet, but it does not need to be, we do not need to continue to keep this meeting open. Is that correct? It actually won't be executive session. We will just meet to discuss the item that we were planning to meet. Is that correct, Mr. Warner?
That's acceptable.
Okay. So we're talking about ethics rules, and we're going to get a presentation. So there's no action, there's nothing beyond that. So I think it's going to be cleaner and easier if we just close this meeting. We're using the technology. We're going to get our team's call, and we'll just get a briefing from staff. Okay. So, but let me check with Ms. Connor to see if there's any further business to come before us today.
No further business. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, I will adjourn, without objection, we will adjourn the meeting.